Hello, hello, hello. I'm making this, recording this video in honor of Valentine's Day. And as we know, Valentine's Day is the day where we celebrate love, right? Celebrate romantic love. And so, in typical Shola fashion, I'm not going to talk about romantic love, but I'm going to talk about love in another context. And that is in the context of self. Now, self-love. You've probably heard it before. And self-love, here we go again. But if you ask the average person, the average woman, do you love yourself? The answer is almost universally yes. But here's the thing. When you watch actions, hear words that are spoken in the unfiltered moment, you start to see that in actual fact, this is not the case. Many people do not love themselves. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 signs that you do not love yourself. But not only that, I'm actually going to share what one can do to overcome those things and what one can do in order to actually truly love oneself in a complete and holistic way. So, number 1. You ready? You neglect yourself. I was in a Facebook group not too long ago, and somebody was talking about how, said something about we neglect ourselves. And I responded that I do not neglect myself. If you love something, you won't neglect it. Therefore, if you suffer with self-neglect, that means you suffer with a lack of self-love. Now, am I saying this to say this is your fault or that you're bad or flawed or there's something wrong with you? Absolutely not. This is just, a lot of it is due to societal conditioning. Maybe you haven't been loved as a child. Maybe you weren't loved. Maybe you were not shown love in the appropriate way. So as such, it's hard to love yourself and you may end up neglecting yourself. But here's the thing, if you neglect yourself, stop saying that you love yourself, right? Because if you have a new car, a possession, or maybe even another human being that you love, there's a certain way that you treat things and people that you love. And if you're neglecting yourself, that is the total opposite. Learn to put yourself first. Learn to stop neglecting yourself. And one of my videos that I did, actually, the previous one, you can actually watch that and see. I shared a little bit more about self-neglect and how to stop doing that. Start to put yourself on the top of your own list. The world will not fall apart if you care for yourself. Because guess what? If you died today, guess what's going to happen? People will cry, probably cry very loudly, but they will continue with life. They will move on. Your job will move on. So you owe it to yourself not to self-neglect. Okay? So, number 2. 5 signs that you do not love yourself. Number 2 is you embody an identity that is not in keeping with self-love. Now, what do I mean? So there are 7 different identities that are anti-self-love. And I'm going to talk about 3 because 7 of them, oh my goodness, I've literally written a 4,000 word essay on the 7 identities. So I'm just going to talk about 3 of them today so that I don't bore you to tears. The first identity that I'm going to talk about that is anti-self-love is the identity of the martyr. If you see your life as only being worth it when you're suffering for others, then you cannot love yourself. You won't even be able to. The second identity that is anti-self-love is the pleaser identity. People pleasing, right? We all talk about people pleasing. You've probably heard about people pleasing. You may have heard people say, I'm a people pleaser, or you may have even said it yourself. Oh, I'm a people pleaser. The thing about people pleasing is it's a subtle form of control. You will never be happy. You will never love yourself if you are running from pillar to post, trying to say yes to everyone. The truth is that you cannot please everyone. It's not possible. You cannot please everyone. You cannot say yes to everyone. You're not jollof rice. You're not tequila. You cannot please everybody. People are entitled to feel what they feel about what you do. As long as you're not doing anything that's illegal, immoral, unethical, unsafe, or unkind, then you have a right to live your life without centering it around pleasing people and making everybody happy. It's impossible to make everybody happy. Just as it's impossible for the average human being to lift an elephant, a full-grown elephant, above his head, guess what? It is impossible to please everyone. So the sooner you accept that you don't have to be a martyr, suffer for everybody, and you do not have to please everyone, the sooner you can start on the business of truly loving and taking care of yourself. Now, the third identity is that of the fixer. So these three identities, martyr, pleaser, fixer. The fixer is the one who thinks that every single, as long as it's a problem, it's theirs to fix. Now, these are people who have their circles of control and influence, and they have a problem differentiating between the things that they control and the things that they do not. So guess what? Everything that's a problem is yours to fix. Actually, it isn't. You cannot fix everything. Even if you were to go to bed tonight having fixed all the problems in the world, guess what's going to happen when you wake up in the morning? Boom, problems all over again. So you cannot fix all the problems in the world. The political unrest, the global warming, the world poverty, and let alone the problems that you have to fix in your daily life, right? So being a martyr, a pleaser, or a fixer are anti-self-love. If you're any of these, you are not loving yourself. And these are signs that you don't love yourself. The easiest thing to do is just stop. Withdraw, cold turkey. Yes. Remind yourself that you cannot fix everyone's problems and start to mind your own business. Remind yourself that you cannot please everybody because you cannot control people's feelings. You don't control people's feelings. That's just some psychic power that you just do not have. In the same way you cannot carry an elephant, you cannot please everybody. That's just the way it is. The minute you accept that, the minute you can stop feeling obligated to make everybody happy, is something you cannot do. That's like feeling obligated to lift up an elephant, a fully grown one for that matter. And the martyr, again, do not, your self-worth does not lie in suffering for other people. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. So that is number 3. Number 4, did I say number 3 or number 4? Number 4? No, sorry. This is number this is number 2. Number 3 is another sign that you don't love yourself is that you follow the voice of your inner critic. You live by the voice of your inner critic. There's this movie called Luca in which this mer boy was trying to describe the, how you have to silence your inner critic, your inner critic that says you can't do that, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you can't, you shouldn't, makes you feel guilty about even normal things. That's the inner critic. If you live by the voice of your inner critic, you do not love yourself. You just don't. That's just not self-love if you live by the voice of your inner critic. So what you need to do is recognize the voice of the inner critic and say, as they said in the movie, Silencio Bruno. If your inner critic's name is Bruno, tell Bruno to keep quiet and stop talking to you, and start to listen to your true voice, which is the voice of your inner ally or your inner coach. Now, number 4, if you feel unworthy of good things, you do not love yourself. So you may hear people talk about self-love all day long, but there's some people that won't hire a coach, not because they can't afford a coach or they don't need a coach, but because they cannot fathom that they're worthy enough to spend that money on themselves. That's it. Some people, that's all it is. It's not because they can't afford it, or maybe you want to buy a new car or something for yourself, and affordability is not the issue. Now, there's a difference between when it's an affordability issue, which sometimes you can't afford something, you can't afford it. But when you can afford it, but there's something inside you saying, oh, well, this money could go to feed the homeless or whatever, take care of the homeless, etc. But guess what? You're not even trying to give the money to the homeless anyway. Probably you'll spend it on some other thing that you can't really track, simply because you don't feel worthy enough to make that investment in yourself, buy yourself something nice. If you don't feel worthy of good things, you don't love yourself. And what you can start doing today is to remind yourself of your self-worth. Remind yourself that you're worthy. Remind yourself that you're worthy of good things. Remind yourself that you're worthy of anyone's time. Remind yourself that you're worthy to be invested in. Because the only person you need to convince is you. Self-worth is innate. It's like a heart. You have a heart that's beating. You can't walk up to somebody and say, oh, I don't have a heart. It's like, they were like, yeah, well, so how are you walking around and breathing and alive, right? In the same way, you can't say, oh, you have no self-worth, or you tie your self-worth to something outside of you. The same way you have a heart, you have self-worth, point blank, period. What you need to do is to convince yourself of that fact. Decide that you are worthy. Believe that you are worthy of good things. You see, so loving yourself is not just about declaring how, oh, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. It's more to it than that. Now, the last but not the least point, 5 signs that you don't love yourself. You constantly look for external validation for everything. There are some people who just run from pillar to post with every problem that they have, looking for somebody to validate them or to get permission, right? Weird things I've seen in some of these groups, these weird questions that people ask that are just common sense answers, but because no one has given them permission. If you're always looking for external validation and permission, you don't love yourself. You can't love yourself, because it means you don't trust your own inner voice. If you don't trust your own inner voice, you don't love yourself. That's just the truth. So the question is, where do we go from here, right? So with each of those things, you can walk them back. And you can walk them back very simply. And if you're having difficulty, this is when you need to hire a coach. And my link is in the comments. You can just book a call with me. I'm not even going to send you a website. I'm going to send you straight. You're coming straight. You're going to be sent straight to my calendar. You book a free call with me, and I can start to help you deal with some of those things. Number 1. So to recap, I'm going to recap the sign and briefly the solution. Number 1. 5 signs that you don't love yourself. The first one is you neglect yourself. Well, I think I've convinced you that self-neglect is not necessary. Stop doing it. Number 2, your identity is out of keeping with a self-loving identity. Again, if you're a martyr, a pleaser, or a fixer, stop. You can actually stop. And if you can't stop, that's when you need a coach. If this video is not enough, then it doesn't mean, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, it's easily said than done. Because we will say things like, it's more easily said than done. It's like, what does that statement even mean? More easily said than done. Everything is more easily said than done. For example, I could say carry an elephant. Yeah, that's more easily said than done. So don't talk yourself out of what you need by phrases like more easily said than done, right? Because you're just telling yourself you can't do it. Basically, you're telling yourself you can't love yourself. If you're a martyr, a pleaser, or a fixer, stop. Martyring, pleasing, and fixing. Number 3, if you live by the words of your inner critic. Number 3, you don't love yourself if you're living by the words of your inner critic. Listen for that voice. Listen for when you know. Listen so you know the difference between your real self, your true identity, and your inner critic. And stop listening to the inner critic. When you stop listening to the inner critic, it loses its power. Have your own equivalent of Silencio Bruno. Stop listening, and then it will soon fade away. Number 4, if you constantly feel unworthy of good things, remind yourself of how worthy you are. You are the only one that needs to convince yourself that you are worthy. Nobody can do it for you. I can't do it for you. I could tell you that you're amazing, fantastic, a unicorn, etc. from now until, I fall out of my chair and my eyes burn to raisins. But guess what? Only you will believe what you say. If you have to write the phrase "I'm worthy" on a sticky note and plaster it all over your mirror, your laptop, everywhere, so that you believe it. Remind yourself of your innate worthiness. Your worthiness has no basis on what you do, or how much you make, how you look, what you look like, your race, whatever. It's innate. And you are the one that has to remind yourself of that. Last but not the least, my recap. My recaps are getting longer than the if you constantly looking for external validation, stop. When next you have a problem, when you're tempted to pick up the phone or start going into Facebook groups and being a nuisance, sit down and ask yourself, okay, what should I do? And if you're actually stuck, then you can call someone rather than picking up the phone because you don't trust yourself. You don't love yourself enough. You don't love yourself enough to trust yourself and trust your own voice. There you go. So these are 5 signs that you don't love yourself and the solutions. And like I said, this is in honor of Valentine's Day. It's not just about love in terms of romantic relationships. Self-love is very important, and I dare say even more important than whatever romantic relationship you may or may not be in or be trying to get into. So thank you very much for watching or listening. If it's on, this broadcast goes on YouTube and my podcast. So thank you for watching or listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.